The C-130 Hercules roared across the night sky, a massive metal giant slicing through the darkness at 25,000 feet. Its engines hummed with the deep vibration that only old military aircraft carried, steady, dependable, a reminder of every mission flown before. It was supposed to be a routine transport flight from Fort Bragg to the Nevada desert. Nothing dangerous, nothing unexpected. Inside the dimly lit fuselage, soldiers sat strapped into their seats, their helmets resting on their knees, their gear piled beside them. Some talked quietly, some slept, some zoned out with headphones. The air smelled of hydraulic oil, machine grease, and the faint rubbery scent of parachute straps. And then there was Lena Graves, the girl no one paid attention to. She sat alone near the bulkhead, hood pulled over her head, hands clasped tightly together. She had the small frame of someone who avoided attention on purpose, slight shoulders, lean build, soft posture. A wrench hung from the side of her toolkit, clinking lightly every time the aircraft shifted. She looked like a mechanic, a junior tech, the kind commanders forgot the names of. And at a glance, that's all she wanted anyone to think she was. Commander Nolan Rourke stood several feet away, arms crossed, looking over the cabin with the automatic vigilance of a man who'd spent too long in uniform. Tall, built like granite, a jaw that looked carved by the military itself, he had the presence of someone meant to lead. As he walked past Lena, he barely noticed her. Just another quiet specialist, just another face. But Lena noticed him and everyone else. She noticed everything. Every jolt in the aircraft's movement. Every flicker in the overhead lights. Every shift in the engine's rhythm. And she hated that she couldn't stop noticing. It had been 2 years since she'd been on anything that flew. 2 years since she promised herself she'd never set foot in a cockpit again. 2 years since the last time she heard the sound of rotors cutting the air right before everything went wrong. She pressed her fingertips against her knees until they hurt. Focus, breathe, don't think about it. But trauma wasn't something you asked to stay away. It came with teeth. Across the cabin, Private Harris and Corporal Vega were arguing about football. Someone else was laughing too loudly at a joke. Another complained about the dry pretzels given with the flight rations. To them, this flight was boring. Just another airborne Uber. To Lena, it was a prison cell with wings. She closed her eyes. Just land safely. That's all you need to get through. Rourke stepped forward toward the cockpit, checking on the pilots. A good habit, strong leaders do that, but as he reached the door, the plane jolted. A metallic shriek echoed from the left side. Lena's eyes snapped open. Rourke froze. Then, a thunderous boom. The entire aircraft shook violently. Soldiers grabbed their straps. Some screamed. Loose gear toppled. A storage crate broke free and slammed into the opposite wall. The lights flickered wildly. Alarms erupted shrill, piercing, angry. Lena's heart rammed against her ribs. Not again, please, not again. Rourke shouted over the noise, "Hold on, stay in your seats." The plane lurched hard left, dipping lower. Oxygen masks dropped like dangling ghosts, swinging above heads. Smoke drifted from the wing, illuminated by the red emergency lights. A second explosion rattled the cabin, smaller, but enough to send fear ripping through everyone. Panic spread like fire. "What's happening?" We're going down. Get the masks." Then the voice from the cockpit. "Commander, left engine failure. We're losing output." Rourke fought to stay balanced. "Can we stabilize?" "We're trying, assist needed. The controls are fighting us." Rourke turned quickly to the cabin. "Does anyone here have pilot experience? Anyone at all, especially Rotary, Black Hawk, Chinook, Lakota, anything. We need backup now." The soldiers stared blankly at him. Someone muttered, "Who the hell on a transport flight would know how to fly a Black Hawk?" Lena's pulse hammered. Her throat closed. She tried to stay still. Invisible. Forgettable. But the aircraft nosed downward slightly, a drop that triggered every horrible memory she'd locked away. She tasted dust. She heard screaming. She smelled burning fuel. She felt the world falling again. No, no more running. Rourke shouted, "Anyone with flight training, speak up." Silence swallowed the cabin. Lena's legs trembled beneath her. She didn't want to stand. She didn't want to remember. But people were crying, screaming, praying, and she knew. If she did nothing, if she let fear win, these people would die just like her team did. Her breath shook, slowly, painfully. Lena Graves rose from her seat. Every head turned. A ripple of confusion spread. A mechanic. This tiny, quiet girl. She spoke softly, but the words cut through the panic. I can fly a Black Hawk." Rourke stared at her like he'd misheard. "What?" Lena swallowed hard. "I'm qualified, former 160th SOAR trainee." Gasps, whispers, shocked glances. Rourke marched toward her, eyes narrowed. You're listed as a maintenance tech." "That's not the whole story," she said, voice trembling. The plane jerked sharply. Someone screamed. A metal latch snapped somewhere in the back. Rourke grabbed a rail to steady himself. "If you're lying," he growled, "every single person on this plane dies." Lena held his gaze. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff again. "I'm not lying." The plane shook violently again, harder, angrier than before. Rourke's expression changed. Not trust. Not disbelief. Something between. "Then move," he said. "We're going to the cockpit now." Lena followed him forward, gripping anything she could. Her legs were unsteady, her breathing uneven. She hadn't stepped inside a cockpit since that night. The night she buried her career and part of herself. As she approached the door, her hands trembled. Her vision blurred. Her body remembered the crash before her mind did. "Not again. Please don't let this be again." Rourke shoved the cockpit door open. Inside, warning lights flared like a Christmas nightmare. The pilots wrestled with the controls, sweat dripping down their temples. "We're losing altitude," one shouted. Rourke pulled Lena inside. "Tell them what you told me." Lena forced herself to speak through panic. "I'm flight certified. Night Stalkers, Black Hawk School, Special Operations Rotary Wing Program." The pilot blinked in disbelief. "You are?" Rourke snapped. "She's all we've got. Let her in." Lena stared at the controls. Her hands froze. Her lungs tightened. Her past rushed back like a tidal wave. Rourke saw the fear. "Graves, what's wrong?" Her voice cracked. "I wasn't supposed to fly again." Before he could respond, the aircraft tilted sharply into a dangerous downward descent. Everyone screamed. The instruments blared. Altitude dropped. And Lena, the girl who ran from the sky, was being pulled back into it to save them all. The cockpit vibrated with a violent tremor as the aircraft fought the pull of gravity. Warning alarms blared in rapid, chaotic pulses. Red lights flashed across the control panels, casting sharp, frantic shadows across everyone's faces. "Altitude dropping fast," the co-pilot shouted, his fingers flying desperately across the controls. Lena stood frozen in the doorway. Her past pressed against her chest like a weight she couldn't lift. Her breath came shallow and uneven. The smell of burning metal. The hiss of electrical failure. The shudder of falling. It all came back like a ghost dragging cold fingers down her spine. Commander Rourke grabbed her by the shoulders and pulled her fully into the cockpit. "Graves, I need you present right here, Right now, do you hear me?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the instrument panel, locked on the flashing altitude indicator, locked on the nightmare repeating itself. The pilot snapped, "Commander, we need assistance. Does she actually fly or not?" Rourke shook her once hard. "Look at me, Graves, look at me." Slowly, painfully, she dragged her eyes away from the controls and up to his face. Rourke didn't look angry, not anymore. He looked scared. Not for himself. Not for the plane. For everyone on it. "Whatever happened to you before," he said, voice low but steady, "it's not happening again. You're here, you're alive, and you can do this." Lena swallowed hard, forcing air into her lungs. "I haven't flown since the Red Mesa crash," she whispered. Both pilots froze. "Red Mesa," the co-pilot echoed. "You were on that incident." Rourke frowned. "What is Red Mesa?" The cockpit fell quiet except for the roar of the surviving engine struggling to stay alive. The pilot muttered, "It was a classified Night Stalker training op 2 years ago. A Black Hawk went down in the canyon. They said everyone died." Lena closed her eyes. "I was the pilot." A heavy silence settled. Even the alarms seemed quieter for a moment. The pilot suddenly understood. "Jesus, that was you." Lena didn't explain further. She couldn't. Not now, not with the darkness tightening around her throat. Rourke steadied her again. "You survived that. You can survive this. Now get in the damn seat." The aircraft lurched downward again, hard enough to slam the cockpit door into the wall. That broke her hesitation. Lena slid into the auxiliary seat behind the pilots, one hand bracing herself against the vibrating panel. "Talk to me," she ordered. "What's working, what's not?" The co-pilot answered quickly. "Left engine gone. Right engine barely holding, probably 10% power at best. Hydraulics unstable. We're nose down at a dangerous angle. Control resistance at 60% and climbing. And we're losing altitude faster than the terrain allows." Lena leaned forward, scanning the gauges. Okay, we need to level out. Even partial stabilization buys us minutes." The pilot barked a humorless laugh. "We don't have minutes." But Lena wasn't listening. Her brain slipped into a different mode, the one she thought she'd buried forever. Her hands hovered over controls. Her eyes flicked between instruments in rapid succession. The pilot in her, the one she tried to kill, woke up. She took a breath that wasn't steady, but it was enough. "Commander," she said firmly, "strap in, and brace for turbulence." Rourke complied instantly. "Pilots on my mark," she continued. "Nose trimmed down, counterpressure ready, we're going to force a manual leveling." "That'll overstress the frame," the pilot warned. "If we do nothing, we hit the mountains," she shot back. He shut up. Lena grabbed the auxiliary controls. 3, 2, 1, pull. The cockpit filled with the groan of straining metal as they forced the nose upward. The plane fought back like a wounded beast. For a second, just a second, it felt like they had control. Then the aircraft bucked hard. Lena's head snapped forward. Her ribs screamed in pain from the impact. But the altimeter slowed. Not enough. But it slowed. The co-pilot let out a shaky breath. "We're too low. Even leveled out, we won't clear the ridge." Lena's eyes snapped to the terrain radar. A massive dark shape filled the screen. A mountain ridge rising up like a jagged wall ahead. Another jolt shook the plane. "We're not going to make it," the pilot whispered. Panic rippled again. Lena clenched her jaw. "Then we won't go over it." Rourke stared at her. "What are you thinking?" "Emergency descent, controlled dive." "We go around it, not above." The pilot gaped. "That's insane. We're too heavy for that kind of maneuver." "We don't have to be." She unbuckled her straps and stood, despite the plane rocking violently. "Commander, open the cargo latch." Rourke blinked. "You want to dump weight?" "All of it." "But the men." "They're strapped in," Lena said. "If we don't do this, they die anyway." Rourke hesitated for only a fraction of a second, then bolted out of the cockpit. The moment he left, the aircraft lost 500 feet in 5 seconds. Lena yelled after him, "Now, Commander." He sprinted down the fuselage, shouting orders over the chaos. "Secure gear, hold on to something." The soldiers scrambled to buckle tighter, grabbing straps and rails. Rourke slapped the emergency release lever. Every unsecured crate, tool, supply pack, and equipment locker slid violently toward the rear hatch, then disappeared into the darkness as the latch blew open. Weight dropped sharply. The aircraft jerked upward an inch. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But it was something. Back in the cockpit, Lena regripped the controls. "We have one chance," she muttered. The mountain ridge loomed larger, filling the entire windshield. She manipulated the flaps manually, fighting the resistance. Her arms shook, sweat dripped, her stomach twisted in fear she couldn't let surface. "Angle 3 degrees left," she commanded. "Start the dive." The pilot swallowed hard but obeyed. The plane tilted nose first, dropping faster, too fast. The ridge slid past them on the right side, close enough that Lena could see the rocks scraping in the moonlight. They made it around the ridge. But now they were falling. Too low. Too fast. Too unstable. And the only flat terrain underneath was unforgiving desert. The co-pilot shouted, "We'll have to land it." "Land," the pilot cried, "with one dead engine and failing hydraulics." "We don't land," Lena said, eyes locked on the descending altimeter. Her voice was steady now, calmer than anyone else in the cabin. "We crash." The pilot stared at her. "Controlled crash landing," she clarified. "Gear up, minimize roll, we angle into the sand, that's our only chance." The co-pilot's voice shook. "If we're off by a few degrees." "We die," Lena said bluntly. Rourke burst back into the cockpit, panting. "It's done, cargo's gone." But when he saw the ridge disappearing behind them and the ground rising ahead. "Graves, what now?" She didn't look back. Now she whispered, "We brace." The ground rushed toward them. The cockpit lights reflected in her eyes. Her hands tightened on the controls. Outside the windshield, the desert floor filled the view. Rourke grabbed the overhead rail. "Graves." She cut him off. "Hold on." The C-130 slammed into the earth. And everything went white. The rain was coming down in sheets now, hammering against the cracked windshield of the disabled Black Hawk as if trying to force its way inside. Maya blinked away the droplets clinging to her lashes, her fingers tightening around the cyclic as she leaned forward, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. She had flown in worse, far worse. But what made this night different was the knowledge that every life behind her depended entirely on her next decisions. The commander, Colonel Reeves, sat stiffly in the co-pilot's seat, hands braced against the panel. He hadn't spoken since they'd regained a sliver of control, but she could feel his gaze on her, evaluating, questioning, and slowly, very slowly, changing. He wasn't looking at the quiet girl anymore. He was looking at a pilot. "Torque holding," Maya shouted over the storm. Reeves snapped out of his daze and checked the gauges. Holding at 30%, not ideal but not dropping. "It'll have to do." She pulled the collective slightly, coaxing more lift without overwhelming the damaged rotor system. The helicopter shuddered, metal groaning. Behind them, the passengers, civilian engineers, a medic, 2 young geologists, and a security officer, clung to their seats. Panic hovered just under the surface, but Maya kept her voice steady. "We're stable for now. Everyone stay strapped in." There was a soft chorus of nervous acknowledgments. Reeves leaned closer. "You're sure you can keep her in the air? That engine barely breathing." "I don't need it breathing," she said calmly. "I just need it awake." He stared at her for a moment before huffing a breath that was half disbelief, half reluctant admiration. Maya flicked a switch on the overhead panel, trying to reboot a secondary system. Nothing. Sparks crackled somewhere behind her. The storm outside howled. "Tell me the plan," Reeves said finally. She wiped her wet sleeve across her cheek and tightened her jaw. "We can't go back. The wind shears too strong for the descent, and the valley behind us is flooding by the minute. And forward. We try to reach Ridgepoint Plateau. The wind should drop there, and the terrain is flat enough for an emergency landing, if we can make it. That's at least 15 minutes away. The alternative is crashing in the river gorge below us in 3. Reeves gave a stiff nod. "Then fly." The helicopter pitched unpredictably as a rogue gust slammed into them. Several passengers screamed. Maya countered instantly, instincts firing faster than thought. The tail swung left, she corrected. Altitude dropped, she compensated. Reeves watched her hands move with surgical precision. She didn't look panicked. She didn't even look stressed. She looked alive. A flash of lightning lit the cabin, and for a moment the world outside was a jagged white void. Thunder followed with a bone-shaking crack. The helicopter swayed dangerously. "Maya," Reeves said, gripping the seat, "if you have any tricks, now's the time." She scanned the storm front ahead. The darkness churned like an ocean of ink, but in the swirling mass she spotted what she needed, an updraft column. "There," she said. "If I catch that pocket, we can climb without putting stress on the engine." "You're going to surf an updraft." "It's either that or pray." "Then I choose the pilot over the prayers," Reeves muttered. Maya banked the helicopter toward the rising thermal. As they hit the edge of the column, the aircraft lurched upward, buffeted violently, but lifted. For a moment the helicopter felt weightless, suspended between the storm's fury and gravity's pull. The passengers gasped and grabbed onto anything they could reach. "Hold steady," Maya whispered, not to them, not even to Reeves, but to the aircraft itself. The instrument panels flickered. The warning lights blinked frantically. A new alarm started beeping. "Engine temperature rising," Reeves said. "Let it," Maya murmured, "just a little longer." The updraft's force surged, pushing them higher. The helicopter groaned as if protesting the abuse. A loud bang echoed through the cabin. "What was that?" the medic shouted from the back. Maya didn't answer. She already knew. One of the tail, rotor blades had fractured. She grit her teeth, muscles coiled with tension. "We need altitude, just another 100 feet." Reeves glanced at the altimeter. "We're close to the plateau elevation." "Good," she said through clenched teeth, "because once we clear this ridge, we're dropping." He swung his head toward her. "Dropping as in?" "Auto-rotation." Reeves swore under his breath. Auto-rotation was a maneuver that only skilled pilots could execute perfectly, and even then, it required a helicopter in better condition than theirs. "It's the only way," she said. "Engine, too unstable to risk power landing. But if I get the descent just right, the rotors will carry us." "You think you can pull it off?" His voice was tight but not dismissive. "Not anymore." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." They broke over the ridge. Below them, Ridgepoint Plateau spread out, a dark, wet expanse shimmering with rain, a long stretch of relatively level ground. Not perfect, but possible. "Maya, we're losing tail stabilization," Reeves warned. "I know." "Altitude dropping." "I know." "Engine temperature critical." "Reeves," she said sharply. He went quiet. She softened her tone. "I need you calm." He swallowed, then nodded. "Okay, I'm with you." Maya cut the engine. Instantly, the cabin filled with a horrible, empty silence. No roar, no hum, just the shriek of wind and the whine of the free-spinning rotor. The passengers screamed again as the helicopter tilted nose down. Maya, one of the geologists, sobbed from the back. "We're falling." "We're landing," she corrected, voice firm. "There's a difference." She lowered the collective to build rotational speed in the blades. The world outside blurred. Rain pelted the windshield like stones. The helicopter spiraled slightly, tail fighting to stay aligned. Reeves grabbed onto his harness. "Rate of descent is too high." "Not yet." "Altitude, Maya." "Not yet." Her hands moved in steady, almost graceful motions. She waited, watching the ground rush toward them. The moment came. Now. She pulled the collective up, feeding the rotor's stored energy into lift. The helicopter slowed sharply, the rotors screaming in resistance. The ground surged toward them, fast but no longer lethal. "Brace," Reeves shouted. The skids hit the soaked earth, hard. The helicopter skidded across the muddy plateau, careening sideways. Mud sprayed up on either side. The tail boom scraped the ground, sending sparks flying. Then it stopped. Silence followed. Thick, heavy, almost unreal. For a few seconds no one moved, no one breathed. Then Reeves exhaled shakily. "We're alive." Maya sagged back into her seat, sweat mingling with rain on her face. Her arms trembled, not from fear, but from the physical strain of the maneuver. Behind them, the passengers slowly started crying, laughing, grabbing one another in relief. One of them whispered almost reverently, "She saved us." Reeves turned to her, eyes full of something she had never seen from him before: respect. "That was the most insane, impossible landing I've ever witnessed." He shook his head. "Maya, who trained you?" She met his gaze with quiet intensity. "No one," she said. "I learned because I had to." Reeves frowned. "Had to, why?" Maya looked out the cracked windshield at the storm, still raging beyond the plateau. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Because someone took everything from me, and learning to fly was the only way to chase the truth." Reeves stared at her, stunned. And in that moment, he realized something. This girl wasn't just a pilot. She was a storm of her own. For several minutes after the crash landing, no one could speak. The adrenaline in the air was thick enough to taste, and the only sound was the distant grumble of thunder echoing across the plateau. The helicopter's rotors slowed to a dead, groaning stop, their final clicks fading like the last beats of a dying heart. Maya rested her forehead against the control panel, breathing in slow, measured pulls. Not panic, just exhaustion. Controlled. Contained. She could feel Reeves watching her, trying to make sense of the girl who had just pulled off a maneuver veteran pilots wouldn't dare attempt. Finally, he unbuckled his harness. "We need to check on the passengers," he said quietly, almost respectfully. Maya nodded and pushed herself up, her legs unsteady but functional. When she stepped into the cabin, every pair of eyes swung toward her, not with fear or doubt, but awe. The medic, a wiry man with a clipped beard, let out a trembling laugh. "I thought this was it. Then you did whatever that was." "Auto-rotation landing," Maya said simply. "Basic stuff." "Basic," one of the young geologists squeaked. "You mean pilots do that on purpose?" "Only when falling out of the sky," she replied. A few people laughed, shaky, hysterical laughter born of survival. Reeves stepped forward. "Everyone listen. The helicopter is down, but we're safe for the moment. We need to move away from the aircraft in case of fuel leaks." They gathered their packs and climbed out into the storm. The wind was fierce up on the plateau, but at least the ground was solid. Maya inhaled cold air that felt sharp enough to slice her lungs. Every muscle in her body still hummed with leftover tension. Reeves joined her, his jacket soaked through. "We need shelter," he said, "and a way to signal for help." "Radio's dead," Maya replied. The storm fried half the electrical system when the engine blew. Reeves' jaw tightened. Then we walk. Maya scanned the tree line along the plateau's western edge. The forest beyond was dense, dark, and alive with flickering shadows. There'll be cover down there, she said, but also predators and unstable ground. Reeves gave her a sideways look. How do you know that? She didn't answer right away. Because this place wasn't random to her. She'd spent years studying remote terrain like this, not from textbooks or maps, but from memory, from running, hiding, searching. I've been in places like it before, she said at last. Reeves didn't push her, not yet. They formed a line, Maya at the front with Reeves close behind. Rain pounded the plateau like war drums, making visibility poor and footing worse. They moved toward the tree line, stepping over slick rocks and patches of tall grass that glistened with rainwater. When Maya stepped into the forest, the air shifted, darker, colder, more alive. She gestured for everyone to stay tight. Watch your footing, she warned. Ground soft, stay on high roots. One of the geologists nodded. This soil's unstable, landslides probably common. Maya already knew that, but she appreciated the confirmation. As they walked deeper, Reeves moved beside her. You never answered my question, he said. Why would someone take everything from you? Her footsteps didn't falter, but her breath did, barely. She kept her eyes forward. It's complicated. We've got a long walk. She swallowed hard. My parents were aid workers, she began slowly, her voice almost swallowed by the rain. Humanitarian pilots. They flew food and medicine into war zones, disaster zones, places no one else wanted to go. Reeves listened silently. I grew up in helicopter hangars, learned to walk holding onto landing skids. I loved it. So what happened? Reeves asked. Maya hesitated, then forced the words out. When I was 15, their helicopter went down over a conflict zone. The official report said mechanical failure. Her hands clenched into fists. But it was. Someone sabotaged the engine. Someone they trusted. Reeves sucked in a breath. You're sure? I found the proof myself, she whispered. Unfiled maintenance logs, threat letters, damaged components sealed into scrap containers. But the investigation was closed before I could show anyone. So you learned to fly, Reeves said slowly, to follow their trail. To follow the people responsible, she corrected. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating her face, sharp, determined, shadowed by grief she'd carried too long. Reeves exhaled. That must have been a hell of a burden. It wasn't a burden, Maya said. It was a direction. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Reeves asked quietly, Did you ever find them, the people behind it? No, she said, her voice hardening. But I found signs, patterns, and every time I got close, something pushed me back. And now? Maya paused at the base of a massive fallen tree, scanning the darkness for movement. I think someone's still watching me, she murmured. Reeves frowned. What does that mean? Before she could answer, the security officer from their group jogged up behind them, panting. Commander, look at this. He held out a piece of torn fabric, camouflage cloth, soaked with rain but unmistakably military grade. Maya's blood ran cold. Reeves narrowed his eyes. That didn't come from us. No, Maya whispered, examining the tear, and it's fresh. A twig snapped in the distance, sharp, deliberate. The entire group froze. Reeves reached for the sidearm at his belt. Maya lifted a hand. Don't move, eyes up. The forest suddenly felt too quiet, too alert. Then a voice echoed through the trees, male, accented, mocking. Well, well, it said, drifting in like smoke. If it isn't little Maya Hale, you survived the crash. Reeves tensed. They know you. Maya didn't answer. Her heart hammered once hard. Branches shifted, shadows coalesced. Then 3 figures emerged from the darkness, armed, wet from the rain, and wearing tactical gear marked with an insignia Maya recognized instantly. A symbol she had prayed she'd never see again. A symbol tied to the sabotage of her parents' helicopter. Reeves stepped forward. "Identify yourselves." The leader smirked. "No need for introductions, Commander. We're only here for her." His finger pointed straight at Maya. Gasps rippled through the group. Reeves stepped between her and the strangers. "Over my dead body." The leader shrugged casually. "If you insist." He raised his weapon. Maya's instinct screamed. "Scatter," she yelled. Gunfire erupted. The forest exploded into chaos. Shouts, running footsteps, flashes of muzzle fire slicing through the darkness. Reeves grabbed Maya's arm. "This is about you. Why are they after you?" Her voice shook, but her resolve did not. "Because," she said, pulling him into cover behind a fallen log, "I'm the only one alive who knows what they did." "And what's that?" Reeves demanded. She looked him dead in the eyes. "They killed my parents." Lightning cracked, illuminating her face, fierce and unbroken. "And now," she whispered, "they're here to finish the job." The forest was alive with chaos. Rain pelted down in jagged sheets, mixing with the acrid smell of gunpowder, wet earth, and the coppery tang of blood. Shadows danced as muzzle flashes lit the trees like lightning strikes. Screams and shouting echoed through the underbrush, bouncing off the trunks in every direction. Maya pressed herself against the wet bark of a massive oak, chest heaving, ears ringing. Reeves crouched next to her, holding a rifle, every muscle coiled. Behind them, the remaining passengers, terrified, bewildered, had frozen in place. "Move," Maya hissed. "We can't stay here." Reeves glanced around, assessing the battlefield. The attackers, 3 heavily armed men in tactical gear, had taken advantage of the storm and the darkness. They were disciplined, coordinated, and ruthless. Each one moved with lethal intent, searching for their target, her. "Cover me," she said. Reeves nodded grimly, laying down suppressive fire toward the closest assailant. The man went down behind a large fallen log, his armor sparking under the bullets. Maya didn't hesitate. She sprinted, weaving through the muddy undergrowth, dragging herself forward while keeping low, eyes scanning for another opportunity. Her training, 160th SOAR Night Stalkers, kicked in with ruthless precision. She was calculating, anticipating. She noted their positions, their packing, the flashes of gunfire, and the fact that the storm masked most sound. "Reeves to the ridge," she yelled over the thunder. He nodded and grabbed 2 of the passengers, helping them run through the thick brush. Maya stayed at the back, slowing only to ensure the others stayed alive. As she ran, her mind raced, flipping back to every mission she'd flown before, every emergency, every crash she'd survived. The Red Mesa crash, the mission that had almost killed her and claimed her team. Every lesson, every scar, every fear became a weapon now. She rounded a bend in the plateau. Mud sucked at her boots. Rain poured into her eyes, and then she saw it. A shallow creek cutting across their path, rising fast from the storm. The attackers were closing in. 2 were flanking from the north, 1 from the south. Maya realized immediately. The ridge behind them wasn't safe. They'd be cornered. She knelt quickly, scanning the creek. "Reeves, jump in, stay low. The water will cover our trail." He looked at her, doubt flickering across his face. "This water's freezing." "No time to debate," she snapped. "We survive or we die." One by one, they plunged into the shallow creek. The water slapped against them, icy and merciless. Their movement stirred the mud and debris, but it masked their scent and slowed their pursuers. Maya took a deep breath, assessing the attackers. One had reached the creek's edge and fired blindly, bullets pinging off nearby rocks. She felt the pressure building. This was the moment she had trained for, feared for, and hoped never to see again. A memory flashed, her co-pilot at Red Mesa screaming as the chopper spiraled out of control. The sound of metal tearing, the blood, the guilt. She swallowed it down and focused. Survival right now. "Reeves, follow me," she whispered, leading the group downstream, moving fast but carefully through jagged rocks and fallen branches. The attackers cursed and fired sporadically, their discipline breaking as frustration mounted. They hadn't expected their prey to fight back, or to think so fast. Maya spotted an old ranger's cabin ahead, its roof half-collapsed, door hanging off hinges. She knew it might not hold, but it was cover. "Inside now," she commanded. They sprinted, bullets whizzing overhead. One of the geologists slipped, but Reeves grabbed him mid-fall. They crashed through the cabin's doorway, slamming it behind them. The wood groaned under the impact, but it held. Inside it was dark and damp. Broken furniture and debris littered the floor. Water seeped through the roof. The storm outside was deafening. Maya pressed her back against the wall, listening. The attackers were circling, frustrated, cursing the storm and the dark. They wouldn't give up easily. She whispered to Reeves, "We're not safe yet. We need an exit plan." Reeves' eyes narrowed. "What do you suggest?" Maya scanned the cabin. Windows were barred by fallen beams. The front door was barely holding. She noticed a trapdoor under a loose floorboard, half hidden under debris. "Here," she said. "This might lead to the old drainage tunnel. If it's intact, we can slip out without being seen." Reeves nodded. "Do it." She dropped to the floor and pried up the boards. The tunnel stank of mold and stagnant water, but it was narrow and dark, perfect for their escape. One by one they climbed down. The group huddled together, shivering, wet but alive. Maya was last, checking behind her. She paused, listening for the attackers. A shadow moved across the broken window. One of the men peered in, scanning. Maya froze, then silently dropped a small, jagged rock. It hit the opposite wall with a loud clang. The man flinched, aiming toward the sound, giving them just enough distraction to slip into the tunnel unseen. The tunnel was tight, wet, and pitch black. Maya's flashlight flickered but held. They moved slowly, carefully, every step a potential misstep. Minutes passed. Hours felt like minutes. The storm outside continued its assault, rain pounding and wind howling. Every sound seemed amplified in the tunnel. Every shadow seemed alive. Maya's mind raced. She couldn't stop thinking about why they had been targeted. The attackers weren't random mercenaries. They were trained, disciplined, and obsessed. Someone wanted her dead, and not just for revenge. A sudden bang echoed from the tunnel entrance. The attackers had followed them. Reeves whispered, "We need to move faster. They know we're here." Maya pressed on. Every muscle screamed in protest, but she couldn't stop. She glanced at the group, tired, frightened, but trusting her completely. That trust was both a gift and a weight. Ahead, a faint light glimmered, an exit. The tunnel bent slightly, revealing a slope that led to the side of a ravine. If they could reach it, they could disappear into the forest, possibly losing the attackers in the storm. "Almost there," she whispered, pulling herself forward. Then from behind a shout. "Stop, she's in there." Bullets ricocheted off the tunnel walls. The group froze, hearts pounding. Maya's hand shot to her side, pulling a small sidearm. She aimed at the tunnel entrance. Her training, instincts, and sheer survival instinct merged into one seamless reflex. "Keep moving," she yelled. They bolted forward, diving through the final bend of the tunnel. Rain and wind hit them like a wall. They stumbled onto a muddy slope leading to a dense thicket. Maya turned, peering back. The attackers hadn't followed, not yet. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to relax slightly, but only slightly. Reeves grabbed her shoulder. "You saved us again, but how the hell did they find you?" Maya's eyes narrowed. Somewhere in the storm, the answer waited, and she knew the hunt was far from over. Her lips pressed together. "They've been tracking me for years," she said quietly, "and tonight they finally caught up." Lightning split the sky behind them. Shadows of the forest seemed to shift and come alive. The storm wasn't over, and neither was the danger. Maya took a deep breath. She had survived Red Mesa. She had survived a near-fatal helicopter crash. She had survived trained killers in a storm. But she knew this. The real fight was only beginning. The forest was alive with danger, but Maya had learned to use that danger as an ally. Rain-slicked branches snapped underfoot as she led the small group deeper into the woods. Every step was calculated, every movement measured. Reeves followed close, keeping the passengers tight and moving silently. The attackers could be anywhere, but Maya trusted her instincts. They were closing, yes, but they were also predictable. She motioned for the group to halt behind a dense thicket. Mud clung to their boots, and the cold rain stung their faces, but Maya's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings like a hawk. "They're not far behind," she whispered, "but we have the advantage here. The storm masks our scent and noise. If we move carefully, we can set a trap." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "A trap in this weather?" Maya didn't answer. She had already crouched beside a fallen tree and started gathering loose branches and rocks. Her mind raced, remembering every survival and evasion tactic she had ever learned. Trip wires, distractions, choke points. "Follow my lead," she said. The group huddled together, hearts hammering. She instructed them to remain silent, to watch for movement. Then she took a deep breath and peered through the gaps in the branches. The first attacker appeared, moving cautiously, scanning the forest. His wet gear glistened under the occasional lightning flash. Maya counted silently. 2 more, and then the leader who had orchestrated this hunt for her. She whispered to Reeves, "Wait for my signal." Minutes passed like hours. The storm drowned all sound except the occasional distant thunder. The forest seemed to hold its breath with them. Then it came, a rustle to their right. One of the passengers gasped. "Quiet," Maya hissed, raising a hand. Her eyes locked on the attacker who had slipped too close to the trap she had set. With a quick motion, she kicked a loose log, sending it rolling across the muddy ground. The attacker's head snapped toward the noise, and Maya seized the moment. She lunged from cover, striking the man with a precise blow that sent him sprawling into a puddle. The other 2 attackers froze. Their training faltered, if only for a second. That second was all Maya needed. "Move," she shouted. The group sprinted down a narrow, muddy path Maya had chosen. She led them into a natural choke point between 2 massive boulders. The attackers followed, weapons ready, but the narrow passage made it impossible for them to advance together. Maya crouched low, her sidearm ready, and began a rapid series of maneuvers. She aimed carefully, each shot precise. 2 attackers went down with a combination of bullets and skillful hand-to-hand strikes, leaving only the leader. Reeves gritted his teeth. "That's all 3 of them." "Not for long," Maya replied. "The leader will be cautious. He won't rush, but he's coming." The wind picked up, rattling the trees, carrying the faint sound of movement through the storm. Maya could hear it, the snapping of branches, the heavy tread of someone confident and ruthless. "Here," she whispered to Reeves, motioning toward a hidden incline above the choke point. "He'll come through here." They waited, silent and tense. The passengers clutched each other, wide-eyed and shivering. Then he appeared. The leader stepped into the narrow path, his rain-slicked face partially obscured by a hood. His weapon glinted under the lightning. His gaze was cold, calculating. "Maya Hale," he said, voice cutting through the storm. "Finally we meet." "You won't leave here alive," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. He smirked. "Brave words. Let's see if you can back them up." With a sudden motion, he advanced, moving like a predator. Maya's heart surged, adrenaline flooding her system. She pressed her back against the boulder, using the incline for leverage, and waited. As he entered the choke point, she sprung into action. Using her momentum and the narrow path, she forced him backward, twisting his arm and knocking the weapon away. He grunted but quickly regained control, drawing a knife from his belt. Reeves shouted from behind, firing a warning shot that distracted the man just enough. Maya lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. They struggled in the mud, rain mixing with blood as fists, knees, and elbows moved in a blur. Maya felt the familiar surge, the fight for survival, the focus that had saved her countless times. She wasn't afraid. She was alive, and she was determined. The leader twisted violently, trying to throw her off, but Maya anticipated it. Using his momentum, she flipped him onto his back and pinned him down. Her knee pressed into his chest. "End of the line," she said, her eyes blazing. He sneered, "You're good, but not enough." Before he could strike again, a flash of light cut through the darkness, helicopter spotlights cutting through the storm. Rescue, or reinforcements for the attackers. Maya didn't know, but she didn't wait to find out. She pressed her advantage, keeping the man subdued until the sounds of approaching shouts grew louder. The other attackers, disoriented and separated by her traps, were now fleeing into the forest. Reeves joined her, breathing heavily. "You okay?" Maya nodded, though her body trembled from exhaustion. "For now, but this isn't over." The leader glared up at her, mud and rain streaking his face. "You think this is the end? You have no idea what you've started." Maya tightened her grip. "I know exactly what I've started, and I'm not running anymore." The distant helicopter drew closer, its lights illuminating the trees. Relief and fear mixed, rescue or new danger. Maya didn't have time to wonder. She grabbed the leader, tying his hands with a piece of rope she had found in the cabin earlier. Reeves helped the passengers climb toward the ridge where the helicopter would land. Maya stayed behind for a moment, scanning the dark forest. The storm was relentless, but the forest was eerily quiet now, the echoes of the struggle fading into the rain. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the night pressing down. Every step, every decision, every life saved had brought her here, but the hunters were still out there. The man pinned in the mud was only a piece of the puzzle. The people who had killed her parents, sabotaged her life, and orchestrated this hunt remained a mystery, and now they knew she was alive. As the helicopter landed, muddy rotors spraying rainwater in all directions, Maya looked back at the forest. Shadows shifted, and she felt eyes watching from the darkness. She knew the hunt was far from over. But for the first time, she also knew she could fight. And she would. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating the haunted look in her eyes. Somewhere deep in the forest, the true enemy waited. And this time Maya Graves, pilot, survivor, avenger, was coming for them. The helicopter's rotors whipped the rain into a blinding curtain as Maya clung to the side of the cargo ramp, watching the forest recede below. The survivors huddled inside, dripping wet, exhausted, and silent. Reeves kept a steady hand on her shoulder, sensing her tension but not daring to speak. He had learned long ago not to question the quiet intensity of someone who had faced death repeatedly and survived. Maya's mind, however, was not on the passengers. It was on the man she had captured in the mud, the one who had whispered promises of unfinished business. He was a warning, a message, a thread leading back to the people who had destroyed her life years ago. She felt it in her bones. The hunt was far from over. The helicopter landed on a cleared ridge near a small ranger station, abandoned but sturdy. Rain poured off the roof in jagged sheets, and mud made every step treacherous. The passengers stumbled out, shivering, and Reeves immediately began setting up temporary shelter. Maya ignored them. Her eyes were on the man, sitting in the wet mud, hands bound, eyes blazing with contempt. "You think this ends with me?" he spat, teeth bared. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I've been waiting for years," Maya replied evenly. "I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly what you did." He laughed, low, cold, humorless. "You have no proof. You can barely walk after tonight, and yet you talk like you're already victorious. You're a fool." "I'm not finished yet," she said, crouching closer, letting her words carry weight. "And you're going to help me find the rest of them." He stared at her for a long moment, then smirked. "You think I'll betray them? They'll kill me first." "Not if I make sure you live long enough to help me." Reeves stepped forward. "She's right, you want to stay alive, you help us, or you stay here and die in the storm." The man's eyes flicked to Reeves, weighing options, calculating. Survival was a universal instinct even for the cruelest. Finally he nodded. "Fine, but if this is a trap—" "It's not," Maya interrupted sharply. "It's a chase, and I don't miss." The storm had slowed but hadn't cleared. Visibility was low, and every step through the forest was perilous. Maya led the group with quiet precision, using every skill she had honed over years of flying, surviving, and evading. They moved through thick underbrush, past fallen trees and slippery rocks. Every sound, every bird cry, every snapping twig was magnified in the stillness that followed the storm. Maya's focus was absolute. She wasn't just leading, she was hunting. The captured man, whose name she learned was Mercer, limped behind, grumbling but compliant. He revealed bits of information as they moved, names, locations, hints of operations that had remained in the shadows. "They're more organized than you think," Mercer admitted. "They have resources, contacts everywhere. You've only scratched the surface." Maya's jaw tightened. "Then we go deeper." Reeves glanced at her. "Are you sure you want to go after them, after tonight?" "I've waited too long," she said quietly, "and I'm not afraid of them anymore." Night fell quickly, the remnants of the storm leaving everything damp and slick. They found temporary cover in a small cave, its entrance partially concealed by boulders and fallen trees. Maya kept watch at the opening, flashlight scanning the forest edges, gun ready. Mercer, surprisingly subdued, sat at the back, watching her with wary eyes. "You know, you've got guts," he muttered. "Most people would have collapsed after the crash and the ambush." "I don't do collapse," she said, voice low. "I survive." "You survive," he said slowly, "but you can't always win." She stared at him. "Watch me." Inside the cave, she laid out the map she had recovered from her parents' old files, the one they had kept secret. It detailed air routes, covert landing zones, and supply caches. Over the years, she had cross-referenced every known location with Mercer's hints. A pattern emerged, a network that stretched farther than she had imagined. "This is bigger than I thought," Reeves said, crouched beside her. "You're chasing ghosts across half the country." Maya shook her head. "Not ghosts, real people. People who killed my parents, sabotaged my life, and hid in plain sight. And now they think they can strike at me again. They're wrong." Mercer interrupted. "You think you can just walk into their world and take them down?" "I don't walk in," she said. "I hunt." Hours passed in tense silence. Finally, the group heard a faint sound, vehicles moving in the distance. Merced's trucks, or heavier tactical vehicles. Maya's stomach tightened. "They found our crash site," she whispered, eyes narrowing. "And they're coming." Reeves stood quickly. "We need to move now. No way we can hold this cave if they bring reinforcements." Maya nodded. "We go deeper into the forest. Mercer, tell me everything you know about their next moves." Mercer hesitated. "There's a base, hidden, small, well-defended. They rotate teams every few days. Supplies come through a private airfield. If we hit that, you might find the kingpin you're after." Maya's eyes lit with grim determination. "Then that's our target." She rose, scanning the dark forest for paths. Rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the ground was slick, visibility limited. The sound of vehicles, distant but growing, echoed through the trees. "They're closing in fast," Reeves said. "We don't have much time." Maya didn't respond. Her mind was already calculating. Terrain, distance, cover, the element of surprise. Every instinct sharpened, every muscle ready. She glanced at the group. exhausted, terrified, but alive, and that mattered. "Follow me," she said. "We don't just survive, we fight back." A distant scream echoed through the forest, a warning or perhaps another trap. Maya's heart raced. She knew the moment of reckoning was coming. And deep inside she felt the familiar fire, the one that had carried her through Red Mesa, through helicopter crashes, through ambushes. She was ready. Because tonight, the shadows that had haunted her entire life were about to be illuminated. Lightning cracked across the sky again, illuminating the twisted shapes of trees like specters. Maya gritted her teeth. The hunt had begun. The forest was alive with tension. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick, heavy, and electric. Lightning still arced across the sky occasionally, illuminating the dense canopy and casting ghostly shadows that danced across the wet ground. Every step Maya took carried weight, not just for her survival, but for the truth she had been chasing her entire life. Reeves and the passengers followed silently, soaked and exhausted, but trusting her instinct completely. Mercer, their captive and reluctant guide, moved behind, eyes darting nervously. He knew what was coming. He just didn't know if he would survive it. Maya's gaze was fixed on the faint glow of lights ahead, a compound, camouflaged and hidden within the folds of the forest. Her parents, killers, had built a fortress here, secure, confident, and unaware that someone they thought powerless was now coming for them. "This is it," Maya whispered. "The heart of their operation. Everything we've been tracking leads here." Reeves glanced at her. "You sure about this? We're outnumbered and they've got heavy gear. You really think we can take it?" Maya didn't flinch. "I don't think I know. I've prepared for this my entire life. Tonight it ends." Mercer let out a bitter laugh. "You really believe you can just walk in and take them down? They've survived everything, no, everyone. And now you." Maya's eyes burned. "I've survived worse, and I've been hunting them for years. This ends tonight, Mercer. Whether you help me or die here, I'm finishing it." The approach was cautious. Maya led the group through a narrow ravine that gave them cover from the compound's perimeter lights. Cameras scanned in slow arcs, automated turrets patrolled the walls, and sentries moved in pairs. It was a fortress, but Maya had studied their movements carefully, and every pattern, every lapse in vigilance had been memorized. "This way," she whispered, pointing to a section of the fence that Mercer confirmed was poorly reinforced. "We get in silent. No alarms, move fast." They slipped through the weak point in the fence, mud and rain making the climb slippery and treacherous. Once inside, Maya signaled for everyone to split. Reeves took the passengers to a safe location, while Maya and Mercer moved deeper toward the central building. Inside the compound, the atmosphere was sterile and industrial, the air cold and mechanical. Maya's footsteps were silent on the metal grating. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with the anticipation of facing the people who had haunted her life for decades. Mercer whispered, "They have armed guards everywhere. You'll be lucky if you make it to the main office without being spotted." Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her focus was absolute. She moved with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime preparing for this exact moment. They reached the stairwell leading to the main building. Maya pressed her back to the wall, peering around the corner. A lone guard walked past, unaware of their presence. She counted the steps, timed the interval, and darted across the landing, subduing him silently with a well-placed strike. Mercer flinched. "I can't believe how good you are." "This isn't about being good," Maya replied. "It's about finishing what they started." The main office was just ahead. The lights flickered ominously as Maya approached. Inside, a man sat at a desk, tall, imposing, exuding authority. Cold, sharp eyes scanned the monitors in front of him, and then he turned. "Maya Hale," he said, voice calm, deliberate. "I was wondering when you'd arrive." Her pulse surged. This was the man, the one who had orchestrated her parents' death, sabotaged the investigation, and hunted her ever since. He had known every move she made, predicted her every step. She breathed, gripping her sidearm. It ends tonight. He stood slowly, unthreatened. It ended years ago. Your parents, your childhood, your illusions of safety, all gone. You've been chasing shadows. Maya's hands didn't waver. I'm not chasing shadows. I'm finishing the hunt. The man smiled coldly. You think you can fight me? You're just a girl who survived a helicopter crash. And I survived worse, she said, voice steady, eyes blazing. The confrontation erupted with brutal intensity. Guards rushed in from the sides, and Maya moved like lightning, striking, dodging, and disarming. Mercer stayed back, watching, unsure whether to help or hide. Reeves coordinated the passengers from a safe location, shouting instructions over comms stolen from the compound's own network. Maya disarmed 2 more guards, using momentum and precision strikes to neutralize threats faster than they could react. Every move was calculated, every breath controlled. The leader tried to retreat, but Maya anticipated his path, cutting him off. They faced each other, breathing hard, soaked with sweat and rain that had tracked in from the storm outside. You killed them, she said, my parents, and you hid in plain sight. Why? He laughed. Power, money, influence. That's all anyone cares about in the end. You should have stayed dead. I should have stayed alive, Maya countered, voice deadly calm. But I didn't, and now you pay. The final fight was brutal. Hand-to-hand combat, knives, and quick movements honed by years of survival training. Maya's strikes landed with precision, knocking him to the ground repeatedly. The storm outside seemed to echo the violence inside, lightning illuminating their struggle in bursts of white fire. Finally, with one decisive move, she pinned him down, pressing the barrel of her sidearm to his forehead. It's over, she said. He looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and respect. You survived everything. And I finished everything, she replied. Your reign, your lies, it's done. She motioned to Mercer, who quickly bound the man. The threat was neutralized, the network exposed. The lives lost could never be restored, but justice, long delayed, had finally arrived. Hours later, the survivors stood outside the compound as the storm began to clear. The helicopter, repaired with help from local authorities and emergency crews, waited to take them to safety. Reeves looked at Maya, awe and respect in his eyes. You did it, he said quietly. Maya shook her head. We did it. No one survives alone in this life. Mercer, subdued and resigned, looked away. You're relentless, he muttered. I underestimated you. Maya didn't reply. She was already thinking ahead, about the families affected, the evidence to hand over, the truth finally coming to light. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself a small, quiet smile. The helicopter lifted off, cutting through the mist and clouds. Below, the compound shrank into the forest, a shadow of the terror it had once been. The storm had broken, but inside her a calm had settled, a promise fulfilled, a chapter closed. She glanced out the window, rain dripping from her hair, eyes steely but calm. The hunt had ended, the truth revealed, and the ghosts of the past finally confronted. And as the helicopter rose above the forest, Maya Hale, pilot, survivor, avenger, finally allowed herself to breathe. The storm had passed, but the legend of the quiet girl who stood up when no one expected her, that would never be forgotten. The end.